What if one of the richest men in America walked straight into the orbit of one of the most notorious predators in modern history and thought it was worth the risk? That is the question that still haunts the Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein story. Because this is not just celebrity scandal. It is not just tabloid material. It is a window into something much bigger in America. How power moves, how reputation protects, and how the elite can convince themselves that access is more important than judgment. Jeffrey Epstein was already a convicted sex offender. That was not hidden. That was not unclear. And yet, years later, Bill Gates still met with him multiple times. So the question is not whether their relationship was close, in the way the internet often exaggerates. The real question is this: why would a man with Bill Gates' influence, resources, and intelligence choose to spend time with Epstein at all? And that is where this story becomes more than gossip. Because in the United States, scandals like this tend to reveal the real architecture of power. Not always crimes, not always conspiracies, but something more familiar. A culture where wealth creates distance from consequences and where elite circles operate by a different moral math than ordinary people. By the public record, Gates met with Epstein several times after Epstein's 2008 conviction. Gates later said those meetings were a huge mistake. He said the discussions were related to philanthropy. Public reporting has also shown Gates flew once on one of Epstein's planes to Florida, not to Epstein's island, despite years of online rumors that tried to turn that into something bigger than the confirmed record shows. That distinction matters. If you are going to talk about this story seriously, you have to separate what is documented from what is merely repeated. There is no public evidence showing Gates was charged with crimes related to Epstein, and that is important to say clearly. But that does not make the story disappear, because in American public life, character is not judged only by criminal guilt. It is also judged by the company you keep, especially when the warning signs were already obvious. And that is the heart of it. Epstein's real power was not that he was famous. It was that he made himself useful to powerful people. He understood a very old American truth. If you can offer access, introductions, money conversations, and the illusion of opportunity, some of the most powerful people in the country will tolerate far more than they should. This is not new in American history. From the Gilded Age to Wall Street to Silicon Valley, the United States has always had a strange relationship with wealth. Americans admire success, but they also fear what success can hide. Industrial titans built libraries while exploiting workers. Financial empires shaped public life while hiding private rot. Tech leaders promised to change the world while building networks of influence no voter ever approved. That is why the Gates-Epstein story lands so hard. It touches a deep American suspicion that the people who claim to be building the future often live inside private systems of privilege that the public never fully sees. And when those systems are exposed, the response is always the same: regret, distance, damage control. Bill Gates has said he regrets meeting with Epstein. Melinda French Gates also made it clear she was deeply uncomfortable with Epstein, and later spoke about that discomfort publicly. That matters because it shows the issue was not just created by media speculation after the fact. It became a real fracture point inside one of the most influential families in American philanthropy. And that brings us to the deeper political question. For years, Americans have been told that billionaire philanthropy can help solve the problems government struggles to fix: health, education, poverty, climate, disease. Sometimes that money does accomplish real good, but stories like this reveal the other side of that model. When enormous influence flows through private dinners, private meetings, private foundations, and private promises, public accountability gets weaker. No one elects billionaires. No one votes on their networks. No one approves the private people they choose to legitimize. Yet those relationships can shape public life in ways that affect millions. That is why this story matters beyond the names Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein. It forces Americans to confront an uncomfortable truth. In this country, power is often not only about law, it is about access. It is about who gets invited in, who gets forgiven, and who gets treated as untouchable until the public finally pushes back. So, what was their relationship? Based on the public record, it appears to have been a post-conviction association built around repeated meetings, philanthropy talk, and elite networking. Not a proven criminal partnership, not the wildest version of the story pushed online, but also not something trivial. Because even if the relationship was limited in scope, it still reveals something disturbing about how America's elite think. It reveals how a convicted predator could still find doors open, how status can blur moral boundaries, how intelligence does not always lead to wisdom, and how power, in America, too often assumes it can manage risk better than everyone else. But history keeps teaching the opposite lesson. Sometimes the biggest scandal is not the hidden crime. Sometimes it is the visible decision, the handshake, the meeting, the willingness to look past what should have ended the conversation before it ever began. And maybe that is why this story still refuses to die. Because deep down, Americans understand that when a man like Epstein could still gain access to men like Gates, the problem was never just Epstein. The problem was the world that kept making room for him. If you want more deep dives into the hidden patterns behind American power, scandal, and the stories history never fully explains, subscribe to PastCipher. Because sometimes the darkest truth is not what happened in secret. It is what powerful people were willing to accept in plain sight.